Hello, my dear learners. How are you all? Yes, I'm fine. And what about you all? Staying safe? Yes, this is a pandemic time and we all need to stay safe. So stay indoors and stay safe. I'm glad that we are connecting, and today I'm taking part 2 of your lesson on the face of it. It's an interesting play. We dealt with it earlier, but let me discuss a brief summary of the play. Right. There are two main characters in this play, Mr. Lamb and Derry. Derry is a teenage boy, and Mr. Lamb is an old man. Both have one similarity: they both are physically impaired. But Mr. Lamb is an old man and he takes his impairment in a very natural manner. Whereas Derry really feels that people, when see his face, get afraid of him. So we have to be, he doesn't need anyone's sympathy, but he wants that people should not be afraid of him and take his problem as very natural. Okay. Now, what happens? The play begins when Derry enters in the garden of Mr. Lamb. He thinks there is no one in the garden. So he climbs up the wall. When he enters, he hears a human voice, and that is of Mr. Lamb, and he gets startled. So then they both start talking, and Derry tells him what he's going through, and Mr. Lamb says that don't take things in that manner. And somehow Derry उनसे बात करता जाता है और खुलता जाता है, और कुछ टाइम बाद उसे अच्छा लगने लग जाता है मिस्टर लैम के साथ बात करना, क्योंकि वो कहते हैं कि मेरे यहाँ सबका वेलकम है, कभी भी कोई भी आ सकता है, तो उस अच्छा लगता है. तो ही सेज कि थोड़ी देर बात करने के बाद वो ही टेल्स हिम दैट पीपल जब मेरी तरफ देखते हैं, मेरा वन साइड ऑफ माय फेस इज बर्न्ड बिकॉज ऑफ द एसिड fell on his face, so people get scared of him. Mr. Lamb tells him that so what, आप लेकिन आपका पूरा शरीर तो है, आपके दो हाथ हैं, आपके दो पैर हैं, आपकी आंखें, आपके कान हैं. The whole body of yours is intact and it functions. तुम्हारे अंदर दिमाग है. उन लोगों को देखो जो देख नहीं सकते, जो सुन नहीं सकते, जिनको ये सब प्रॉब्लम्स है. तो तुम तो जो चाहे कर सकते हो, लैम टेल्स हिम. And they keep on talking on several issues. और उसके बाद what happens? He says, who helps you in picking those crab apples and pears? So Mr. Lamb says, I do it myself many times. So he says, I am coming back to help. He goes home. His mother says, no, don't go there. I have heard several things about Mr. Lamb. People say he's not a good man. You don't go there. But he is determined. He says कि अगर आज मैं लौट कर नहीं गया तो जिंदगी में मैं दोबारा कभी हिम्मत नहीं कर पाऊंगा. So he runs back to Mr. Lamb, and when he goes there, he finds, he enters saying, see, Mr. Lamb, I have returned. See, Mr. Lamb, I have returned. But when he reaches there, he finds that Mr. Lamb has fallen from the ladder, and he starts uh, get up, Mr. Lamb. But when he doesn't respond, he starts crying. And that is the end of the play. So I've given you a brief summary, and if you want to go in detail, you can go to part one of this lesson, my video. You can get full details of the lesson, written material also, right? So now we quickly move on to the question answers part. So just let me share screen with you all. Just a moment, and the questions will be right in front of you. Okay. Yes, it's here. So, as usual, we'll move with the multiple choice questions. Yes, the first question asks you, name the author of the play on the face of it. So, who is the author? I always tell you to memorize the names of the authors, right? Connect them with the lessons. So, is the author William Wordsworth, or Susan Hill, or Susan Mill, or Jessica Hill? So, I hope you all remember. And the correct option is option B, Suzanne Hill. Right. Now, the next question is, the two main characters of the play are dash and dash. So many times we have talked about these two characters. Yes, Mr. Lamb and Derry. I don't even have to give you the answer. You know it very well. Great. So let's move on to the next one. How did Derry enter in the garden? How did he enter? Through the gate, or he climbed over the garden wall? He climbed a tree. He entered in a car. So, how did he enter? I'm sure you all know. Yes, I can see your smiling faces. Option B is the correct option. He climbed over the garden wall. Right. So, the next question is, the gate to Mr. Lamb's house is, क्या रहता था इस्लाम के घर का दरवाजा? Always shut, opened only in the morning, opens only in the evening, or always open? So, Mr. Lamb's the gate of Mr. Lamb's house always remained open. So the correct option is option B. Yes. Now let's move on to question number 5. Mr. Lamb said that he had dash friends. How many friends he had? 2 or 3? Hundreds of friends. No friends. 8 or 9. If you connect with the play, he says, the door of my garden always remains open. Everyone is welcome there. And I have hundreds of friends. So now you can tell me the correct option, and the correct option is option B. Mr. Lamb said that he had hundreds of friends. Very nice. Great. Jerry didn't like people being friendly, being affectionate, being afraid of him, being sympathetic. अब जेरी had a complex. कोई बहुत दोस्ती दिखाए तो he didn't like. कोई बहुत ही प्यार एकदम से जताने लगे तो भी नहीं अच्छा लगता था. कोई उससे डरे वो भी नहीं. कोई सिंपैथी फालतू में दिखाता तो वो उसे क्या नहीं पसंद था. सबसे ज्यादा नापसंद क्या था? When people were being afraid of him. Yes, लोग उसके चेहरे को देखकर डर जाएं तो आपको कितना बुरा लगेगा ना. So he did not like this attitude of people, right? Now let's move on to question number 7. What ate Derry's face away? What had happened to Derry's face? What went wrong? Yes, acid fell on one side of his face, and you know what acid does? Acid कहीं पर भी गिर जाता है तो क्या होता है? उस चीज को पूरी तरह से नष्ट कर देता है, जला देता है. So the whole the one side of his face got burnt. So the correct option is option A. Many children called Mr. Lamb by the name of Uncle Lamb, John Uncle, Lemmy Lamb, none of the above. कैसे बुलाते थे बच्चे? बच्चे बदमाश होते हैं ना। जब एप्पल खाने हैं, पियर्स खाने हैं, टॉफी खाने हैं, तो बड़े प्यार से गार्डन में घुसेंगे, खाएंगे और वैसे टीज करेंगे, चिढ़ाएंगे। कैसे पुकारते थे? लेमी लैम। यस, ऑप्शन सी इज द करेक्ट ऑप्शन। राइट, now let's move on to question number 9. Why did Mr. Lamb help Terry? क्यों मदद कर रहे थे वो उनकी? Because he was Derry's friend, because he was physically impaired, because he was sympathetic towards him, because he wanted to change his view towards life. Yes, he had a very negative approach in the beginning, if you have observed, because he wanted to remain alone. And that was the reason he entered in the garden of Mr. Lamb, because he thought there was nobody in the garden. Right? So, why Mr. Lamb was helping him? Because he wanted to change his view towards life. Right? So, which option is the correct option? Option D is the correct option. How far was Derry's home from Mr. Lamb's garden? कितना दूर था डेरी का घर मिस्टर लैम के गार्डन से? 3 miles away, 8 miles away, 43 miles away, 6 miles. And if you have gone through the summary part of the lesson, you can answer this question. The home was 3 miles away from Mr. Lamb's garden. So here, option A is the correct option. Okay. Now come the short answer questions. These all will be asked in the written exam of yours. So the short questions have to be answered in 30 to 40 words, right? Let's go through a few of the questions which have been asked in the last few years of CBSE exams. So here are those. What qualities of Mr. Lamb attracted Derry to him? You know, we while going through the lesson, we found that Derry did not like talking to people, but he was attracted towards Mr. Lamb. So Mr. Lamb had certain qualities, right? So the answer is, unlike others, Mr. Lamb did not give importance to Derry's burnt face. He says, so what? जल गया ना, कोई बात नहीं. कुछ पार्ट आपके फेस का ugly हो गया. But that doesn't mean that you cannot do anything in life. So he didn't give importance to that thing. He rather inspired him by saying that he had all the body parts functioning properly, so he could do anything he wanted. है ना? उसको इंस्पायर किया, मोटिवेट किया कि भाई तुम्हारे सारे बॉडी पार्ट्स तो अच्छे से काम करते हैं, सो तुम तो जो चाहो वो कर सकते हो. He gives confidence to Derry and encourages him to develop positive attitudes towards life. There is a typing error, so it is LIFE, right? So he says that he encourages him. He was he had a low confidence level, right? So he raises his confidence. He, if one side of your face is burned, that is not the end of life. जिंदगी खत्म नहीं हो गई, isn't it? So Derry's life now has a new meaning. उसको एक मोटिवेशन, इंस्पिरेशन मिल गई. तो ये क्वालिटी थी मिस्टर लैम में कि उन्होंने उसके कॉन्फिडेंस लेवल को रेज किया, उसके मन से कॉम्प्लेक्स निकालने की कोशिश. So these were the qualities. He didn't give importance to his burnt face. He inspired him. He gave him confidence. He encouraged him. So these are the points. Right. Question number 2 says, why does Mr. Lamb always leave his gate open? He says, my gate of my house is always open, and everyone is welcome here. So why? Why did he do so? Mr. Lamb always left his gate open as he wanted everyone to feel free to come in his garden any time. कोई भी किसी भी टाइम उसके गार्डन में कंफर्टेबली आ सकता है. He is an extremely social person. He likes talking to people. He likes meeting people. He likes socializing people. He likes children. He shares his fruit and toffees with them. So he's an extremely social person and is ever ready to welcome anyone who comes. So, always ready and welcomes anyone who comes anytime. So, because he likes socializing, he likes meeting people, he keeps his gate open. Now, the next question: what peculiar things does Derry notice about the old man, Mr. Lamb? So, what were the peculiar things about him? He was different from others, है ना? दूसरे लोगों से कुछ हटके थे मिस्टर लैम. Mr. Lamb talks about his friends. He lives all by himself and refuses to talk about loneliness. He doesn't like living alone. वो बात ही नहीं करते अकेलेपन की. He likes meeting people. Whosoever comes there becomes his friends, isn't it? He offers whatever eatables he has. He offers the fruits in his garden. He asks questions that Derry does not understand. In the beginning, what he says, Derry is unable to understand. But later on, he starts liking him. After talking to him for some time, कुछ देर बात करने के बाद, he develops a liking towards him. He does not have curtains on his windows as he doesn't want to shut things out and in. अब ये भी एक बड़ी खास बात थी, है ना? एक तो ये कि उनको लोगों से बात करना पसंद था, हर कोई कभी भी उनके घर आ सकता था, ये बड़ी स्पेशल सी बात है ना, अलग सी बात है. देन कर्टेन्स पसंद नहीं थे, कहते किसको अंदर बंद करना है, किसको बाहर बंद करना है, आई डोंट नो. Then he also liked the light and kept the windows open to hear the sound of wind. So he says, मुझे घर के अंदर रोशनी पसंद है तो मैं खिड़कियाँ कर्टेन्स नहीं रखता, खिड़की भी खुली रखता हूँ, हवा आए तो उसकी आवाज़ आए. सब लोग तो ऐसे नहीं होते. We don't want anyone to peep into our house, है ना? So these were the special things of Mr. Lamb. Now, next question is, what consolation did people give to Derry when they saw his acid burnt face? कैसे तसल्ली देते थे लोग उसको जब उसका जला हुआ फेस देखते थे. When people saw Derry's burnt face, they tried to console him by telling him fairy tales. Oh, अलग अलग कहानियां सुनाते थे. अरे देखो उसके साथ ये हुआ, फिर देखो एक राजकुमारी आ गई उसकी लाइफ में, ऐसे फेरी टेल सुनाते थे. They said that it was not important what he looked like. मैंने कहा, सभी लोग कुछ कुछ इसी तरह की बातें करते थे कि कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि तुम कैसे दिखते हो. Some told him that he was better off than those who were blind or deaf, those who had to stay in wheelchair or those who were daft in the head and rib. तो कुछ ने कहा कि देखो तुम उनसे तो अच्छे हो जो अंधा है, उससे अच्छे हो जो बहरा है, उससे अच्छे हो जो व्हील चेयर में ही रहता है, उससे अच्छे हो जिनको दिमागी परेशानी. तो ये सभी लोग उसको इस तरह से कंसोल करते थे, उसको तसल्ली देते थे. राइट. हाउ डज मिस्टर लैम रिएक्ट व्हेन डेरी एंटर्स हिज गार्डन? कैसे रिएक्ट किया था? When Derry climbed over Mr. Lamb's garden wall, he was startled to hear a human voice. But I've repeatedly said that Derry entered thinking that there was no one in the garden or in the house. Mr. Lamb then introduced himself and told the boy to be careful not to trip over the crab apples lying around. He told Derry that there was no need to climb over the garden wall, as his garden gate was always open and everyone was always welcome inside his house. So Mr. Lamb introduced him. See, I am Mr. Lamb. And he also told him that be careful. You may not trip over the crab apples lying around. Be gentle to them. And you may not harm yourself. He told Derry that there was no need to climb over the garden wall. और उसकी क्या जरूरत थी भाई दीवार कूदने की? मेरा गेट तो हमेशा खुला रहता है और हर कोई कभी भी आ सकता है. Now, why does Derry's mother not want him to go back to visit Mr. Lamb? क्यों नहीं चाहती थी वो कि वो मिस्टर लैंग के घर वापस जाए? So she said, Derry's mother said that she had heard many things about Mr. Lamb. कि मैंने बहुत कुछ सुना है उसके बारे में. She had been warned by people to keep away from Mr. Lamb. अब ऐसे कोई एक आदमी अकेला रहता है इतने बड़े घर में, इतने बड़े गार्डन में, लोगों को पता नहीं क्या क्या बातें बनाने का मौका मिलता है. तो उनको भी कहा था भाई अपने बच्चे को उधर मत भेजना. तो शी इज स्केयर्ड, डरी हुई है ना वो. तो उसने कहा मुझे लोगों ने पहले ही वार्न किया है भाई वहां मत भेजना, इस लैम्प से दूर रहो. शी थॉट ही वॉज नॉट अ गुड पर्सन, वो एक अच्छा आदमी नहीं. She stopped Derry from going back to Mr. Lamb, but Derry was determined and asked her not to believe in all she heard. And she didn't want Derry to go back. पहले भी वो गया तो mother did not know, right? Now he has come and he again wants to go, so she will not approve of it. No? But Derry, he was, उसने तो निश्चय कर लिया था कि मुझे जाना ही है. एंड उसने कहा कि जो भी कुछ तुमने सुना है प्लीज उन सब बातों में बिलीव नहीं करो. ही इज अ रियल नाइस एंड जेंटलमैन, राइट? सो आर यू ऑल अंडरस्टैंडिंग? राइट. So let's move on to the next one. Why did the children call Mr. Lamb Lemmy Lamb? Lemmy Lamb मतलब लंगड़ा लैम. देखो, the children called Mr. Lamb Lemmy Lamb because one of his legs had been blown off during the war and he had a thin leg in its place. क्यों कहते थे लंगड़ा लैम? क्योंकि उसकी एक टांग युद्ध में ब्लो ऑफ हो गई थी, मतलब बॉम्ब ब्लास्ट वगैरह हुआ उसमें निकल गई और उसकी जगह एक टिन का लेग लगा हुआ था. सो ऑल्दो द चिल्ड्रन टीज्ड हिम, मिस्टर लैम डिड नॉट. चिढ़ाते थे लेकिन मिस्टर लैम को कोई इन बातों से, ही वॉज अबव ऑल दिस, उनको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, राइट? सो द नेक्स्ट इज comment on the ending of the play on the face of it. At the end of the play, Mr. Lamb fell from the ladder and there was no one to tend to him. सारा टाइम सब 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 आते थे बट कोई नहीं था जब वो गिरे सीढ़ी से उनको देखने के लिए. until Derry arrived. जब तक डेरी नहीं आया, he was lying on the ground. He was grieved on seeing the man who had encouraged him and given him support lying alone on the ground. उसको बहुत तकलीफ हुई कि जो आदमी मुझे इतनी सपोर्ट दे रहा था, इतना इंस्पायर कर रहा था, वो खुद बेचारा अकेले पड़ा है जमीन पर. He now tried to comfort the old man, but it was too late. उसने उसको कंफर्टेबल करने की कोशिश की, उठाने की कोशिश की, लेकिन तब तक बहुत देर हो गई थी. Mr. Lamb was not responding. Now, this is a very important question. If you were to give a different ending to the play, on the face of it, how would you end it? अगर आपसे कहा जाए कि इस प्ले को हम इस तरह से क्यों एंड करें, कोई और एंड सोचिए, तो आप कैसे करना चाहेंगे? I have given my view. You can give a different ending which you feel is appropriate. आपको जो भी ending ठीक लगती है आप अपने words में वो दे सकते हैं. If I were to give a different ending to the play, I would have Mr. Lamb recover from his injury. अगर मुझे मैं लिखूं इस प्ले को और एंड डिफरेंट वे में करना चाहूँ तो मैं क्या करूँगी? मिस्टर लैम को, ठीक है, ही फेल डाउन फ्रॉम द लैडर, उनको चोट लगी, तो लेकिन मैं उनको अलाइव दिखाऊंगी, जिंदा दिखाऊंगी, और वो अपनी चोटों से ठीक हो जाएंगे, रिकवर कर जाएंगे. Thereafter, Mr. Lamb and Derry would become great friends. उसके बाद वो दोनों अच्छे दोस्त बन जाएंगे. Derry would have someone to encourage him and guide him. Derry को एक elderly support मिल जाएगी, कोई उनको उसको encourage करने वाला, लाइफ में आगे गाइड करने वाला मिल जाएगा. Derry would become confident to face the world bravely, और Derry confident हो जाएगा world को bravely face करने के लिए. So these were few short answer questions which I want all of you to go through, and you should know the answers of these questions for examination point of view, right? So let's see what the long question is. Yes, this question I feel is really very important because there are two main characters. Rather, you can say mother's character is a very small one. Rather, we have these two people conversing all the time, right? So compare and contrast the characters of Mr. Lamb and Jerry, how they are similar, how they are different. Both Mr. Lamb and young boy Derry have one thing in common. एक चीज कॉमन थी ना दोनों में, फिजिकल इम्पेयरमेंट. दोनों में कुछ कुछ फिजिकल नुक्स था क्या. Both are victims of these disabilities after birth, and that was not, they were not physically impaired when they were born. It happened due to some misfortune or a mishappening, you can say. The leg of Mr. Lamb was blown off during the war. बताइए आपको क्या हुआ था उनके पैर को? डेरीज फेस वॉज बर्न बाय एसिड. ये दोनों का फिजिकल इम्पेयरमेंट का रीजन था. वन साइड ऑफ हिज फेस लुक वेरी अगली एंड फ्राइटफुल. बहुत भद्दा हो गया था और एकदम से कोई देखता था तो डरता था. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस दे हैव नथिंग इन कॉमन. इसके अलावा दोनों अलग थे. वो बूढ़ा, वो 14 इयर्स का बॉय, वो एक टीनेज बॉय, वो बूढ़ा आदमी है ना, तो एज तो डिफरेंट है ना. उसके अलावा वो कहता है नथिंग वॉज कॉमन इन देम. So Mr. Lamb is old, Derry is a young boy of 14. Mr. Lamb enjoys company and wants to talk. Mr. Lamb को तो लोगों से socializing बहुत पसंद थी. Derry is a very withdrawn and defiant. He wanted to live alone. वो तो अकेला रहना चाहता. तो ये contrast है ना दोनों में. Their age is a contrast. Then their likings are in contrast. He does not want to come in contact with people. He doesn't like talking to people. Mr. Lamb does not bother about his lameness. Mr. Lamb को कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि उनकी टांग नहीं, वो लंगड़े. बच्चे चिढ़ाते थे ना लैमी लैम करके, उनको कोई फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता था. He has developed love for reading books, hearing music, seeing beautiful things and thinking about them. उन्होंने अपने शौक ही बदल लिए. किताबें पढ़ना, म्यूजिक सुनना, अच्छी अच्छी चीजें देखना, लोगों से बातें करना. He is calm and patient. वो शांत रहने वाले, सहनशील. He asks peculiar questions. He forces Derry to see that actions are more important than mere looks. है ना, ये तो कहते ही है ना सभी कि फिजिकल इम्प्रेशन तो फर्स्ट इम्प्रेशन होता है, लेकिन उसके बाद आपका बिहेवियर, आपका नेचर, that helps you in making friends, isn't it? So Mr. Lamb forces Derry to see that actions are more important than looks, to understand. And Derry later on somehow understands कि looks इतने important नहीं होते, आपके actions important होते हैं. In spite of his lameness, he picks apples, makes jellies, maintains a beehive, and makes toffees from honey. So he does that also. He distributes all these things to people who come to him, because he alone cannot eat so many of apples and so many of toffees. So he gives people all these things. The gate of his garden is always open. So Derry develops a new vision of life. Under his guidance, he becomes positive and looks happy. So after talking to Mr. Lamb, Derry uh, gets a new, develops a new attitude towards life. A, rather, I will say a positive attitude. जिंदगी से प्यार उसको बढ़ गया. So there a few more questions can be asked to you, like how was Derry's meeting with Mr. Lamb a turning point in his life? कैसे एक टर्निंग पॉइंट उनकी लाइफ में, आप बताइए. बिफोर मीटिंग मिस्टर लैम, हम पहले उसको डिस्कस करेंगे कि मिस्टर लैम से मिलने से पहले डेरी का एटीट्यूड क्या था. He wanted to remain aloof. He did not want to speak to people, talk to people. He wanted to stay alone. He thought that since he has a physical impairment, he cannot do anything in life. People are not scared of him. People do not want to talk to him. है ना? But when he met Mr. Lamb and talked to him for some time, a new attitude developed, and that was a positive attitude. And now he wanted to do something in life and take his impairment as a normal feature. So I'll be giving the question in the description box and try to give the answer. Most of the matter you can get from these short answers and this long answer. So now, one or two more long questions I'll be taking or giving you in the description box. Right? So, as usual, this is, just let me stop sharing. Yes. So, what you all have to do is note down all these answers in your notebooks. That will be easy for you to revise when you feel like, when your exams are approaching near and you have to revise all these lessons for appearing in the exam, then these answers will help you. So, what I want all of you to do is to note down all these answers in your notebooks or your registers and be prepared for your exams. So, this is all for today. Goodbye. Stay safe.